everyone. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, depending on where you are. I know our Russian friends are calling in, and some Japanese friends and friends from around the United States. And I know Russia is now 5 a.m. Thank you so much for your dedication. My name is Masako Toki, Senior Project Manager at the James Martin Center for Nonproliferation Studies. Thank you so much for joining the Critical Issues Forum speaker series. Today, I am so excited to have Dr. Natasha Bajema, an amazing nuclear expert, as a keynote speaker. She's going to talk about her very exciting radioactive road trip. So today's event title is a pit stop on Natasha Bajema's radioactive road trip. She will be introduced by our center's director, Dr. William Potter, in a few minutes. But before we move forward, let me briefly introduce you to the Critical Issues Forum. I hope you are seeing my full screen. So, and enjoy this very cute cartoon of Natasha and her two dogs. She's going to talk more about her trip, so I'm not going to talk about this. So let me talk about Critical Issues Forum. So Critical Issues Forum promotes disarmament and non-proliferation education for high school students around the world. CIF project goals include to help students appreciate different national and cultural perspectives on complex international security issues and contribute to international peace and security, disarmament, and non-proliferation and other social justice endeavors, while developing their critical thinking and intercultural communication skills. We are engaging diverse groups of students from around the United States, Russia, Japan, including Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Due to the ongoing pandemic, currently we are conducting all the project activities remotely. The speaker series is a creative and innovative product of the remote work during the pandemic, with an aim to reach out to a wider audience online to promote disarmament and non-proliferation education. We are actively engaging young people with various backgrounds and perspectives in the event, both as speakers and participants. In normal years, the CIF project conducts an in-person student conference in Montreal, California, where our school is located. In the past, we also had a conference in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan and Vienna, Austria. Student representatives from each CIF high school present their semester-long studies at their spring conference. We also invite amazing guest speakers from around for the student conference. Each year, we select a timely topic related to nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres states, more education and training opportunities should be established in order to empower young people to be a force for change and disarmament. If you are high school teachers or students and are interested in learning more about the Critical Issues Forum or interested in joining the program, please reach out to me. You can find information about the CIF on our website, and please follow us on the social media, especially Instagram, as we are actively posting educational information. I also wanted to note that tomorrow, January 22nd, is the one-year anniversary of the entry into force of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, commonly known as the Nuclear Ban Treaty. So today is the eve of the one-year anniversary. So it is so appropriate to have this event to discuss nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation today. Finally, CIF activities cannot be possible without generous support from our donors and friends. I would like to express our sincere appreciation to the funders and supporters of the CIF project, the Tom and Sarah Pattison Fund, Saga Foundation, Mr. Greg Walport, and many generous private donors. Thank you so much for your continuing support. I think Tom and Sarah are joining today's event, so thank you so much. So thank you so much for your attention. So now I am very happy to introduce a CIF alumna, Fatima Martinez. Fatima is a second-year undergraduate student at Cornell University and participated in the CIF in 2019 as a representative of Alliance Dr. Olga Mohan High School in Los Angeles. Fatima is going to share her CIF experience. So Fatima, the microphone is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fatima Martinez, and like Masako mentioned, I am a CIF alumna, and I'm very excited to share with you my experience being in CIF and where am I because of it. So my relationship with CIF began during my journey at Alliance Dr. Olga Mohan High School, which is located in downtown Los Angeles. I was intrigued by the cause and the initiative of the Nuclear Free Schools Club that was founded by a CIF teacher and another CIF participant in my high school. And the effort of the club was to educate high school students about international relations, public policy, and the science behind the detrimental effects of nuclear weapons. Luckily, my high school was fortunate enough to have a relationship with CIF, granting my peers and I the ability to participate in the 2019 conference at the James Martin Center for Nonproliferation Studies in Monterey, California. Leading up to the conference in Monterey, I was able to work alongside my peers by researching about the Indian-Pakistan nuclear tension and the effects it had on domestic and international politics, allowing me and my peer to give a presentation about our research and our thoughts about where to go on from there as a nation. Later on that year in 2019, I was able to attend the youth conference for a world free of nuclear weapons as a representative of CIF. It was held in Winnipeg, Canada, where I also had the opportunity to give a presentation about the economic costs of nuclear weapons in Canada, the United States, and Japan. Overall, my experience was very fulfilling. And if there was one thing I could take away from my CIF experience, it is the interactions I had with students around the world. From my trip to Monterey to Winnipeg, Canada, I was able to meet students and educators from Russia, Japan, and Canada. Not only was I able to discuss with them about the international relationships between our countries and of others, but we were also bound together by the common mission of wanting a nuclear-free world. The group activities, the dinners, and the conversation brought us all together, which was very unique. And then we were able to have discussions about what we thought, like ideas we could give and different solutions we can turn to stop uranium mining, nuclear waste leaks, and protect our affected communities in our countries. I'm very grateful that CIF has been a home and a community where all of us have voice and can be heard, especially at a very young age. And to this day, I can only speak very positive things about CIF. My experience continues to impact my life. CIF was able to give me the opportunity to do research, a chance that many adolescents don't have the chance to do so. And my experience was able to prepare me and show me what it takes to do research, critically think, and give professional presentations, and also network with those around me from across, the world. So thanks to the experience and the opportunity, today I have been able to network, write research papers up to like 20 pages on psychological experiments done in the field of law, education, and early development. So the relationships I created during CIF are the ones I continue to have very closely to this day. My high school teacher and club leader in Nuclear Free Schools Club, Mr. Andrew King, was able to write my letter of recommendation when applying to universities. My peers who accompanied me to the conference in Monterey, California, and Winnipeg, Canada are some of my best friends. And even when we come back from college, when we come home, we still hang out and have coffee and just catch up. So today, I am a second-year undergraduate student at Cornell University, where I plan on studying psychology and minoring in human development. I'm currently involved on campus by partaking in mental health organizations in the local university community and working alongside professors in their labs. My end goal in my professional career is to become involved in the educational system and influence the lives in particular. And no matter what that looks like or what kind of role I play, I hope to contribute with positive youth development as a mentor in order to take a step toward social justice and world peace for younger generations. As a first-generation college student and a child of immigrants, I want to emphasize that it is experiences like CIF that remind us that it is possible to accomplish goals and dreams one has. All it takes is a little bit of dedication and the desire to know more about the world, to be heard in society. And although many people disregard the voices of the youth, we are the future, the individuals who change tomorrow in hopes of making it a safer world to live in. And I know all of this sounds really corny, but someday I would like to positively impact the life of a student and give them the opportunity to explore the world, because that is simply the opportunity that CIF and my high school teachers gave me. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Fatima. That was so inspiring. And one of the best things about the CIF project is to meet students like you. Thank you so much. So now I'm very happy to introduce Dr. William Potter to introduce Dr. Natasha Bajema. He is the founding director of the James Martin Center for Nonproliferation Studies. Dr. Potter has been championing in non-proliferation and disarmament education and training for many years. As our center's mission statement reads, CNS strives to combat the spread of weapons of mass destruction by training the next generation of non-proliferation specialists and disseminating timely information and analysis. He has trained numerous young people in this field. In fact, the Critical Issues Forum at the CNS was born from his innovative idea and vision to educate high school students to promote non-proliferation and disarmament. Also, Dr. Natasha Bajema, who is an alumna of Middlebury Institute and the CNS, is one of the products of Dr. Potter's non-proliferation education. So now Dr. Potter is going to introduce Natasha. So Bill, over to you.
Thank you very much, Masako, and I also was inspired by Fatima's marvelous remarks at the outset. I was really glad to see the photos of Bill Perry and Jerry Brown, because I feel as if I've been the professor of almost everybody whose picture appears on the screen. And so it's nice to know that there are a few people who are a little bit older than I am, who I can't claim to have taught much of anything to, but I also count them as my friends. And as Masako pointed out, Natasha also was one of my fantastic students. In fact, when I was kind of reflecting upon what I might say, I recalled a chapter in a book that I edited that she contributed. I'm going to give you the title of that chapter. That is not going to be the topic of the talk today, but it was called Beyond the Security Model, Assessing the Capacity of Neoclassical Realism for Forecasting Nuclear Nonproliferation. So you may have forgotten that, Natasha, but I do recall that contribution in another period of your career when you were working on a PhD. And it's important, I think, to better appreciate what I'm sure Natasha will be speaking about today, because she speaks not simply as a scholar, but also as someone who spent a decade working in the U.S. Department of Defense. In fact, I believe we met once upon a time. You were traveling, I think, with Andy Weber in Kazakhstan. Yes. We were at a meeting there, and so I've seen Natasha there. She's taught Defense Department officials, and so she knows of what she will be speaking about today. I'm really delighted that she has embarked on this radioactive road tripping kind of travelogue, if you will. I was able to see a preview of this. Now it's probably over half a year ago, and I was so impressed that I wrote to Natasha and I said, we really want to be kind of part of this exercise. If we can help, we're anxious to do so. And so I'm so glad that that has now been realized in the form of this particular session of the Critical Issues Forum, which, as Masako indicated, is something that I've been deeply involved with since its inception, and I regard it as really one of the hallmarks of our various programs at CNS. And I can't really think of anyone better positioned than Natasha to join us today. She's kind of been through the experience as a young scholar, as a more senior scholar, as a Defense Department official, and now she's on the road again. So Natasha, without saying more, I'm looking forward to your remarks.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Misako, for this wonderful opportunity to speak to everyone here. And thanks to everyone who is here, especially very early in the morning. Now that is true dedication. So I'm going to be talking to you today about Radioactive Road Tripping, which is a travelogue show that I'm producing for YouTube. I am on day 21 of my almost year road trip. We'll see how long it lasts. Right now, I'm kind of like wanting to go home, but never mind that. I'm calling to you from Fort Myers, Florida. So I spent the first 18 days of my trip cold, despite being in the South, because we're having some odd weather patterns right now. And I'm finally warm in Florida, so I'm a little bit happier. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. So I think you can see that, Misako. Can you see that?
Yeah,
okay,
I can see that.
All right, so this is my logo. So when I first started planning Radioactive Road Trip, I planned to pitch a show to Netflix and Amazon, because who doesn't want to do that? And so I put together a pitch deck and a log line here. And the log line is: a disillusioned nuclear weapons expert hits the road for a year, traveling across the United States in a truck camper with her 2 dogs. Along the way, she visits historical and current sites of the US nuclear weapons complex and chats with the locals about the risk of nuclear war. So after talking to a number of experts in Hollywood about the slim likelihood that I'd ever be pitching a show to Netflix or Amazon, I decided that building an audience on YouTube might be a better approach, especially for raising awareness about nuclear weapons over the long term. However, I never in my lifetime expected to be a YouTube influencer. All right, I have a PhD, I worked in the Department of Defense. This was not on the pathway that I had imagined for myself. But there was something that really intrigued me about the idea. I had a question: would it be possible to generate influence on such a scary and unappealing topic on YouTube? I decided that it might be possible. So as long as I framed the topic as an interesting story, one that would draw the audience in to learn about things they never thought about before. And so this is where the log line comes in. Every idea has, I believe, a compelling origin story, and the origins for R&R are very messy, and they track with some stages of my life that took unexpected turns, in particular in 2020. Yes, that year. I think we can all agree that 2020 provided unexpected turns for us. So I quit my job in 2019, June of 2019. I'd been working at the Department of Defense for more than 11 years. I had a great salary, great benefits. I sold my house, left Washington, D.C. to transition to a brand new career in TV and film. So for those of you who still don't know what you want to do when you grow up, you can stop worrying now. I'm 47 and I still don't know what comes next. Life is about the journey and not about the destinations. And I believe if you follow your passions, the rest will become history. And that's what I'm doing right now. So when I quit my job, I only knew one thing for sure. What I was doing with my career wasn't working. After 20 years of working to reduce nuclear risks, I saw things turn from hopeful in 2000 to grim in 2019 and even grimmer today. I became deeply disillusioned about my chances for having impact. I think we're all here today because we desire to have impact. I didn't think I was going to have impact anymore. I had already invested 20 years. I didn't think I was going to have impact sitting at a desk in Washington. And so I wanted to explore new avenues of influence, such as entertainment and storytelling. I've also begun to wonder whether the levers of influence today are fundamentally different than they were in 2000, whether they've shifted from policy experts and policy makers to the general public and social media and YouTube and things like that. And I think, you know, with the bipolarization and the rise of social media, maybe that's true. I don't know, it's untested. But what bothered me the most was the idea that if I wrote another report about the dangers of nuclear war, that nothing would happen, just the way nothing had happened for 20 years. And I'd grown frustrated that sitting at a desk and just waiting for something to happen, I wanted to take real action to make something happen. And so I took a massive leap of faith. 7 months later, we saw the first signs of the global pandemic. And by March of 2020, we were in the thralls of one. This was not the best time to start a brand new career. After 6 months into the pandemic, I started to realize how bad my timing was. Hollywood had shut down production. How was I going to start a new career? Where was I going to start? How could I possibly, when would I begin one? We're still in the pandemic today. Then I got this crazy idea. Why not produce my own show? I could buy a camper, buy a truck, get out and travel the US with my dogs, visit nuclear weapons related sites, bring my experiences to the American people, and do my own travelogue show, even if we were still in the middle of the pandemic. And it just so happens we're in the largest surge of the pandemic as I begin my trip. The idea sounded pretty crazy, but it didn't come completely out of nowhere. In February 2020, one of my last trips before the pandemic really got started, I visited a fully restored Nike Hercules missile site in the Bay Area, just north of San Francisco. It's situated in these beautiful rolling hills, just a few miles from the Golden Gate Bridge on the Pacific coast. And here we are at a former Nike Hercules missile site. These are surface-to-air missiles that were armed with 20 kiloton nuclear warheads. Why? To defend US cities, to defend San Francisco against a Soviet bomber attack. And I raised, of course, the impertinent question to the tour guide. What happens when there's an airburst nuclear weapon to defend against the bomber attack to the people down below? Yeah, not good. So there were 12 such sites around San Francisco. There were 300 around the US protecting 30 US cities. And I'd been an expert on nuclear weapons for 20 years, and I stood there and my mouth fell open, and it had such a powerful impact on me. And I began to wonder, if Americans could experience what I was experiencing, would they also be so moved? Would they, if we could make the threat of nuclear weapons more proximate to them, would they understand how closely we lived among them and how closely some of us still do? So it's not the typical travelogue show, obviously, and I'm going to use the power of storytelling to try to catalyze change about nuclear weapons, balancing fear with hope. I did a lot of thinking about what kind of stories we should tell. And one of the reasons I am traveling with a truck camper, I'm traveling with dogs, is to make it accessible, to make it interesting from a different entry point. So maybe people follow me for my journey and then they learn stuff that they didn't plan on learning along the way. I believe that if we're going to have impact on regular people, the general public, then our stories about nuclear weapons, whatever we tell, our narratives, our stories, they have to be proximate, they have to be personal, and they have to be in the present. And that's a tall order for nuclear weapons. Proximate. Nuclear weapons feel very abstract to most Americans. I think many Americans don't even think about them at all. They seem far away, somewhere out there, separate from our daily lives. Could we show Americans their geographic realities in a way that might transform their thinking and stimulate a conversation and possibly empower them to take action to reduce the risk of nuclear war? I believe they also have to be personal. Now, if not everybody can go around the country and visit these sites, but what if they could experience that through me in my shoes? Would they start to care about it because they care about my journey? I think people have to care. They have to have a personal reason to care. And so maybe it's not they care about me, maybe they care about the beauty that I'm showing them. Maybe they understand what's at stake when they see, here's a nuclear weapons facility today, which means it's ultimately a target in nuclear war next to this beautiful national park. What are we going to lose? What won't be there anymore? We make choices. We either choose to live in a world where nuclear annihilation is possible, or we choose not to. They have to be present. There's obviously a growing gap between the historical knowledge and experiences during the Cold War. I myself didn't even remember much of the Cold War. I was a teenager, young teenager at the end of the 1980s. So I don't remember the drills that people went through. And that's a problem because the notion of the risk of nuclear war, nuclear weapons, is now buried in the consciousness of past generations. We need younger people to care about these issues. So how can we make it more present, more today? And one of the ways I thought about it was, if I'm traveling around the country in 2022, then it's kind of present, even if I'm talking about the past. So Masako asked me to talk a little bit about nuclear weapons policy. And as a caveat, I want to say that this is from a strictly American perspective, so a nuclear armed state perspective. It also is from my perspective as working in Washington, D.C. for 11 years. So I know a lot of you are involved in the grassroots initiatives around the country. You have a different way of thinking about things, but when you get into the Beltway, there's a certain way of talking and thinking about nuclear weapons. So there's a puzzle that I have. Why do most Americans think that nuclear weapons are abstract and far away from their daily lives when nothing could be further from the truth? And I think how we think and talk about nuclear weapons in Washington, D.C., in our circles, is a big part of the problem. When I say we, I'm talking about the media, experts, I'm talking about policymakers, and all of the dialogues that take place within those elite circles, not out there, beyond that, but within that. We're talking to each other, and that's okay. And we're talking to shape policymakers, influence them, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it, but we can't expect that same concept of the issues to also influence Americans. So when we talk about nuclear weapons policy, we tend to think first and foremost about nuclear deterrence. How do we ensure it succeeds? Will it fail? What about accidents? What about unauthorized use? What about the scenarios in which nuclear weapons might be used? So we talk a lot about nuclear deterrence, the history of it, and whether it might continue to prevail in the future. Within defense circles, we talk about nuclear war planning and what types of nuclear weapons we need to deter our adversaries and potentially win a war in the event that nuclear war actually takes place. And anybody who's been in DC knows that the jargon that's used, heavy acronyms, highly abstract, and exclusionary by default. If you don't know the acronyms, you don't know the terminology, you walk into a conversation, you don't know what anybody is saying. And so you have to learn and adopt that language in order to interact with people. It's very off-putting, it's exclusionary, and it requires us to sometimes adopt a language that we're not comfortable with, because does deterrence really work? We talk about efforts to prevent other countries from getting nuclear weapons. We talk about the agreements and the international laws designed to dissuade them. We talk about reductions in nuclear arsenals by nuclear armed states, the eventual elimination of nuclear weapons, all of which is designed to reduce the risk of nuclear war. Each of these conversations, all three types of conversations, are abstract, esoteric, strategic, and impersonal. They require knowledge of acronyms, jargon, decades of history. We tend to think and talk a great deal less about the practical matters of what it means to be a nuclear armed state, and that's on the right side of this diagram. It's not that we don't think about it, and especially those of you who are working the grassroots level are thinking about the effects of uranium mining, the effects of radiation, and all of those things. But in Washington, we don't talk about that. Not enough, and almost not at all. And I believe that these are the types of things that Americans would find relatable, if not, and we might say, well, they're boring and they're too technical, but they're relatable for three reasons. One, they're proximate. They require facilities. They require infrastructure. People know where they are. People have jobs there. People have relatives that work there. So it's proximate, it's not abstract, it's where I live now, where I grew up, or in a place that I love. It's also personal, something that people care about. Some people work at those facilities, so they care about them because that's where they get their job. Others are in the communities, maybe threatened, feel threatened that their livelihood is threatened in the event that their city might be targeted in a nuclear war. Some people might worry that it jeopardizes the beauty of their home, their outdoor hobbies, their favorite vacation spot, what is at stake in a nuclear war. But also a focus on these things makes it more present. These things still exist. They're still working. It doesn't feel as far away if they're right here in our country in locations that we know and love. So I've designed my visits around the country and my videos for R&R designed to make nuclear policy relatable by grounding it in geographic locations, illustrating the practical consequences of being a nuclear armed state and reminding people what continues to be at stake as long as these weapons exist. And so I visited a mound of uranium tailings in Falls City. It's so large, you can see it very clearly on satellite imagery. And all these videos are embedded and you can watch them later if you want. Nuclear weapons obviously require raw materials, which impose costs on the environment, workers, and the communities in which they're found. Uranium mining causes damage to the environment, unsafe extraction, produces negative long-term effects for workers. And what I found with this particular site, it was just left abandoned. Now it's being monitored by the Department of Energy today, but a mining company was able just to leave these uranium tailings just sitting there in the environment. So where was the accountability for these companies engaged in these practices? Oh, it's gonna play. No. All right. All right. We'll see if I can fast. Okay, there we go. All right, command and control. To launch nuclear weapons, a leader needs to be able to understand the situation underway and communicate with nuclear forces around the world. Early warning radars play a critical role in command and control, allowing a nuclear armed nation to detect an incoming strike. So I visited a former early warning radar in El Dorado, Texas. And what's interesting about this radar, it was very popular amongst the locals because it saved an Air Force base during the 1980s when other Air Force bases were being closed. What was also interesting about some of the media coverage around the site, it's a former site, no longer in operation, was that the locals understood that it made them a target in the event of nuclear war. And you know, there's some people disagreed with this. They didn't like this idea of the fact that their entire community would be wiped out. All right, I think fast forward. All right. I also visited a former top secret national stockpile site in San Antonio, Texas. When we talk about deterrence and we talk about war planning and we talk about nuclear nonproliferation, we don't think about the practical matter of that we have to store nuclear weapons somewhere when they're not deployed on a delivery system. That means they have to be stored safely and securely. And these storage sites not only pose a risk of being a target in a nuclear war, but risk of accidents and injuries and environmental damage. And at this particular site in 1963, one of these igloos, 209 high explosive shells, nuclear weapons shells, not the fissile material, but the conventional explosives, detonated, blew up 123 pounds of TNT, completely blew it up. No one was killed. Luckily, it was very fortunate. But this is the kind of accident that could occur. That was back in the 1960s. These particular weapons, the fissile material was separate from the high explosive shell. That's not how we design nuclear weapons today. So fast forward. Okay. I did an interview with Richard Miller about the radioactive fallout from nuclear testing. So when I was doing some research on Texas and nuclear weapons, I was really surprised to find out that Refugio County, which was the county next to mine in South Texas, was one of the counties that received some of the most radiation from the atmospheric tests in Nevada. It blew my mind that South Texas, a county in South Texas, and then there are hotspots like this all around the United States. Americans are mostly unaware of their exposure to radiation as a result of nuclear testing, unless you're in a community like Utah and other communities where you have this high prevalence. My uncle just came down with an extremely rare adult onset leukemia at the age of 70. And he grew up in Iowa, and Iowa received a lot of radiation from these atmospheric tests. And he was a baby when these tests started. And it kind of made me wonder, is that, a result? Okay. So one thing I was hoping would happen was that I would have conversations with regular Americans around the country about nuclear weapons and kind of discover some of their views. And I was hoping to try to make it happen, but a lot of people don't want to be on camera, I found, and a lot of people don't want to be on camera talking about nuclear weapons, I found. But so some of my conversations are happening largely by accident. And here I am on a tour of the Palo Duro Canyon near Amarillo, Texas, where Pantex is located. And I went on a Hummer tour down into the canyon, and this is my tour guide, Case. He's a Texan rancher, a libertarian, voted for Trump, and he is my tour guide. And he was very concerned because no one else signed up for the morning tour. It was 9:30 in the morning, and we had sub-zero temperature, or freezing temperatures. And he called me up and he said, "Look, ma'am, I think you should be on a later tour," but I couldn't make the later tour. He's like, "I just think it's going to be boring with just the two of us." And I said, "Oh, don't you worry. It's not going to be boring." Because I kind of knew that he would start asking me questions, and then we would start talking, and we'd start talking about everything. But I also didn't expect what we would talk about. I was going to leave that completely up to him. So in this video, we talked about nuclear weapons for, no kidding, 1 hour. And when we got to talking about how many nuclear weapons still existed, he asked me how many I think that we, could reduce down to, because I mentioned, countries are concerned that, as long as these weapons exist, as long as this technology exists, we can't get down to zero. And so, we're riding along in the Hummer, bouncing around, and I'm like, well, what do I say to this guy who's on a different side of the political spectrum? And I said, maybe we could reduce down to 100. And he's like, "Nah, that's too many. How about 25? I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'll go with that." That part didn't get on the video, but it was really, really, really funny that he thought we could have even less, and we could have some sort of international agreement that would divide them up amongst, the Guardian, 5 Guardian countries. And I was like, "Oh, I wonder, there's 5 countries that might, So it was really, really fascinating. And I'm hoping to have similar kind of unexpected conversations along the way. So this is an overview of some of the sites that I'm hoping to visit. I did not make it to the Pantex facility, but I did speak to the Pantex historian offsite. That video is coming out. I did make it onto Barksdale Air Force Base. I went to their global power museum there and talked to the public affairs folks, and they promised me an interview at some point, so fingers crossed. I stayed overnight in a former Titan II missile silo in Arkansas. So I will feature the Damascus accident when I do that video. Next week, I'll be visiting a former Nike Hercules missile site that is actually located within Everglades National Park. And it goes on from there. So what happens next? I've received some generous funding from the Outrider Foundation to produce a pilot episode that may someday be featured on Netflix or Amazon, just kidding. I'm finished filming in December. I'm editing the episode over the next few months. I'm going to be offering a private screening to a limited audience, and then I may pitch the pilot someday to a production studio. We'll see what happens. And then before I do a bit of self-promotion, I want to end my remarks on a high note. You'll hear fiction writers say that you need to show things to your audience, not tell them. So they say show, don't tell. I left my job disillusioned about what we've achieved to reduce the risk of nuclear weapons since I started my career, but I'm not giving up. I just didn't believe that telling people stuff was working anymore. We need to show them why reducing nuclear weapons is important to our daily lives and our future. I would not be investing my life savings or a year traveling around the country, producing video in my free time, because I have a day job, if I didn't believe that real and profound change was possible. I just think that today, if we want to move nuclear weapon states from their status quo positions, we won't do it sitting behind our desks and writing more reports. We're going to have to get uncomfortable. We're going to have to show people we are willing to take a risk, that we're willing to take real action and try new things, even if people tell us that they won't work. We're going to have to start a movement, but we're going to have to move ourselves first. And so that's my uplifting ending for Masako. And I just wanted to mention that I did write a novel about nuclear weapons set in 2033 that examines a nuclear crisis amid a complex set of advanced technologies: social media, deep fakes, cyber weapons, anti-satellite weapons, hypersonic missiles, artificial intelligence. Again, framing the risk in today's language, in today's understanding of technology. Until January 31, you can get a free digital copy from my show website with a coupon revealed on my YouTube channel. And this is the video. It's only like about 3 minutes, and I flash the coupon. I give you instructions. So if you're interested, you can go get that there. I have a website. So this is my website, radioactiveroadtrip.com. If you want to follow there, you can sign up for the blog. I have a map there where I'm building out all the sites that I've identified. It may not be complete, it's a work in progress, and also showing my progress across the country. I'm trying to do this while I do other things. There is merchandise. So if you are a fan of the show or want to support the show, just can go get some Luna and Charlie merchandise, my doggies, who are sleeping very nicely right now. I also have a Patreon, and so for just a few dollars a month, you can, if you're an international audience, this is where you get the merchandise. So my website only does US only because I couldn't figure out how to do international, but you can get merchandise internationally through Patreon very easily. And then please, please, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It makes so much of the difference. It takes a few seconds, a very easy thing to do. There we go. And here's my email, but Masako has this presentation, so if you want my email, you can get it from her later.
Thank you so much, Natasha. That was so inspiring. And thank you so much for your uplifting notes. I will be honest, when I first learned about your new journey, new adventure, I was so encouraged and inspired because you left a very stable job and started a very different approach to accomplish your goal. So this is really good discussion, especially for young generations. So we have a little bit of time for question and answer. So I really wanted to encourage it, especially students or teachers, whoever want to ask question, please don't be shy, and you can raise your hand, and maybe, or if you prefer, you could put your question in chat. So who wants to ask question first? Okay, so while you are thinking, I'm going to ask some question. I know Natasha, what you are doing is just so amazing, but not so many people can follow. It requires a lot of courage and also, yeah, a lot of things, but always it's so important to do something new and something challenging, and push a limit and do something outside of your comfort zone. So it's a little bit abstract question, but do you have any specific message for high school students, regardless of their future goals, but what is your message or encouragement for high school students if they want to accomplish their goals?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the first thing I said at the beginning was, if you don't know what your goals are right now, don't worry. You'll find them. I mean, I think when we think about goals, we make them very large. And I think, you need to focus on what interests you the most, and you need to start working on that, and that will lead you to the bigger goals. I think it's a mistake to kind of make something really large, because if you have this big dream that's this abstract thing and then you actually end up in it, it may not be the dream after all. So that's one thing. I think the other, I invested a lot in my career. I got a master's degree, I got a PhD, I worked 11 years, I slogged 11 years at the Department of Defense. And when I decided to leave that in 2019, it was a big risk. There were some people who basically started to write me off. Well, there she goes, she's never coming back, and good riddance maybe. anyway, it's never too late to start something new. And I think especially I found in the nuclear weapons community in Washington, I found the rules to be very rigid, to be very antiquated, old. And I never have been one to follow rules very well. And I always push the boundaries, and that did come at a cost in Washington to my career, but I never regret it. I always believe that if you're true to yourself and true to who you are, that at the end of the day, you'll find true contentment and you will have impact, because it will be your authenticity that has the impact. So I guess that those are some of my tips.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Natasha. I saw some question from students from Rock University High School. So given the timing, I'm going to read two questions. So first one is, are you going to places around the country that is accessible to the general public, or do you need special permission? That's first question. And how has your previous career in national security been helpful with your nuclear radioactive road trip?
Oh, very, very good questions. So am I going to play? So when I first dreamed of this, I thought I was going to go to all the nuclear facilities that currently are still, you know, highly secretive, hard to get into, all the armed, all the bases, Air Force bases, submarine stations. What I found, however, and the reason I thought I could do this is that I worked in the Department of Defense for 11 years. I worked at the Department of Energy for 1 year. I had top secret clearance. I'm one of them, for crying out loud. I have been treated like a scary alien every single time I try to visit one of these sites. And Pantex was the first, and it was a victory that I was able to meet with the Pantex historian off site, but that was almost not going to happen. I mean, that literally happened the week before I showed up in Amarillo and I had the trip plan. So when I started encountering all of these obstacles, I actually decided that maybe it was better to visit things that other people could visit. Maybe it was better that, you know, for example, at Barksdale Air Force Base, you can visit the Global Power Museum there. You have to get, you know, fill out the paperwork and get on base, but you can actually go visit it. It's open to the public. The El Dorado radar station, I couldn't actually go up and see it, unfortunately, but I could stand in front of the gate because it's an abandoned facility. You can see it from the road. Now, San Antonio, I got public affairs people to let me in, so that I was very fortunate there. But I think more and more my visits are going to focus on what is publicly accessible. So the site in Everglades National Park, they offer tours there on a daily basis, guided tours. So anyone can go do it. So that's that. How has my previous career in national security been helpful on my nuclear road trip? Well, I'm on day 21. So I still have time to answer that question, but obviously being an expert in these issues is helpful wherever I go, because people will, wait, you're a what? You're a nuclear weapons expert? What does that mean? And then I start talking and I start, you know, kind of telling them stories. So I guess that's where my career is helpful, is I know a lot of things that people don't know. And I know a lot of interesting stories and things that would surprise them and shock them and, you know, kind of like get them out of their comfort zone and lure them even further in. So I think that's where that is helpful.
Great, thank you. So I have one more question from another Rock University high school student. How do you use social media to your advantage as an author and activist? How do you use social media?
This is like a hard question. I'm a Gen Xer. Social media is still a very foreign creature to me, and I'm learning. I had a hate relationship with Instagram until recently. I think I finally may have cracked that nut, but for the longest time, I refused to go on Instagram because I'm like, I don't understand it. I just don't understand. I don't get it. I don't, you know, and I didn't want to learn yet. I know Facebook. I've been on Facebook for a long time. I've been on Twitter for a long time. And, but I think I'm figuring out Instagram right now. I'm I'm using obviously social media to plug my videos. I had a lot of help from a former student from the Monterey Institute, Middlebury Institute, Jasmine Owens, and I think she was a speaker as well for CIF. She helped me with some social media. She taught me how to use Instagram. So she warmed me up to it. So she helped me in Canva create some cool graphics with my images, my puppies and stuff like that. And we did some truth bombs. We did some factoid Fridays. We did some, so she got me in the mode, but she's no longer doing that for me. So now I'm on my own, and I think I'm survived this week. I managed to post on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram simultaneously. So I'm very proud of myself. So I'm learning. So YouTube is actually very easy. I had maybe 100 followers, subscribers back in August, and I have 1,200 and I think 10 is the last time I checked frantically. And YouTube, so the Google algorithm is very kind to content that is of interest, and it will show your content to people it thinks would be interested in. And it turns out that not a lot of people, truck campers is a very unique type of camper. It's coming back into trend. It used to be something that people drove a lot more in the 70s and the 80s. Y'all have all seen a truck camper. They're kind of old looking, but today they're brand new, and more people are getting interested in them, because you put the camper on the truck and you're only as big as your truck. So I'm maybe 25 feet long, and I'm, as wide as a pickup truck. I mean, it's not a big deal. And so you can go places where you can't take a travel trailer or a fifth wheel, so I'm getting a lot of interest from that angle, which is interesting.
Thank you. One more question. Oh, Mr. Robert Frag. Yeah, so please. I know he's a famous filmmaker, so it's great to have your question.
Natasha, first of all, congratulations on your fortitude. and I think what's important about what you're doing is you're cracking the code, which has obviously been with this world for a long time. And I think you just should keep doing what you're doing, because as you unfold your various discoveries, if you will, having come from within the Beltway environment, what's important from my vantage point, at least, is you're asking the questions that are very relevant to how the general public can perceive the challenge of something that's been with us now since 1945. And how you go about doing that through the various mediums you're working with, I think also is very important. So my suggestion is just keep plugging along and telling a story. I mean, that's not something you necessarily need to hear, but I believe that's really the secret.
I need to hear it. I'm on day 21, and I'm still at that period where, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I don't, know what the outcome is going to be yet. And obviously I want impact. And so, yeah, it helps to hear that.
But I think also what I'm intrigued by within your 21 days, what has been revelatory to you that you weren't expecting when you started off on this?
A big one. So we have been isolated since 2020 in ways that I don't think anyone could have possibly imagined. Isolated from our families, isolated from our friends, from our schools, from our daily lives. We have been in these boxes, stuck in these boxes for 2 years. All we're seeing on our screens is negativity, negative news. It sells. I mean, negative news always sells better than positive news. What's different is that social media is really, really efficient at generating and passing along that negativity. So when I go through my news feed, all I read about is bad things happening. What I've experienced in 21 days, because I was isolated until 21 days ago, is I've experienced so much kindness, so much enthusiasm from my fellow humans, people helping me, people, stopping to talk to me, people. I mean, it has been such a, I have to do a lot of things that are really difficult. I have to put the camper on the truck, which is very difficult to do as a single person, and then take it off. I have to empty my black tank and my gray tank. I have to make sure the propane is filled. There's a lot of moving parts on this road trip that are overwhelming and taxing, but I've just been blown away by all the positivity. And I think that, you know, I was saying to a friend today, we've been kind of down in the dumps for 2 years, not just because of the isolation, but because we've been bombarded over and over by all this negative things and not really seeing the positive in humanity, but seeing a lot of the negatives of humanity all over the news. As I said, you know, I think that that's not real. I don't think, you know, I'm going to throw something out there after 21 days that the world, that humanity is no more negative than it's ever been. It's just that what we're seeing right now, what is visible to us, is on the screen and not in life. When humans get together, when they interact, and that's why I thought, really what I need to do is go and talk to people. I need to be physical. I need to be in their face and talk to them, and they can see my enthusiasm, and that has impact. And so that, I guess that's my most profound revelation in 21 days.
And you put that on your site?
Not yet. No, that just came to me today. It was kind of like, you know, because my friend and I have been talking about how much has the pandemic changed us as people? Because I don't feel like I'm the same person I was when I started the pandemic. And I can't remember who I was before. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do this trip, because I didn't want to stay in the same place anymore. And I certainly didn't want to stay the person that I felt like I was becoming. Scared, you know, risk averse, you know, not wanting to go out and see new things because I was afraid. And I didn't want to become that person. I've never been that person. And so that's why I did this trip. And I haven't articulated this yet. I think what I'm going to do on the channel is a monthly kind of update where I kind of go through some categories, lessons learned, big revelations, you know, things like that, and kind of share with the audience what's going on.
In a way, it correlates with you being inside the Beltway, within the bubble, if you will, before you broke out of that bubble. And so these two things together are almost like running on parallel tracks as you're going through this experience. In a way, COVID is kind of another bubble, as is nuclear.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing is you're kind of, from my vantage point and just observing, listening to your story, you're able to take and put these pieces together. It's almost like a self-help program for everybody else.
Well, I am in a midlife crisis. I don't know what I'm doing with my life for the next 20 years. So there you go. Yeah.
Well, you know what you're doing for the next whatever period of time this trip is taking.
Yes, I planned it.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Well,
I just wanted to have two more questions, because one is from our Russian student who woke up at 5 a.m. So I couldn't ignore Russian student question. So, and I'm going to read both questions. So Natasha, if you could answer at the same time, then we are going to take a group photo. So please activate your video. Don't go yet. What is the most memorable place you have visited? That question from Russian student. And other question from Mr. Nobuhiro Matsuoka from Harvard University. Thank you, Natasha. Wonderful talk. I've just subscribed to your YouTube. Yeah, everybody has to do that. And do you have any plans to expand your activity with other countries or other sectors like climate change?
Okay, so most memorable place so far, and it hasn't been that long, but it would be the staying overnight inside of a former Titan II missile silo. So this is you have to walk down 5 flights of stairs just to get to the base floor. That's the main floor of the command center. And then you walk onto what is floor 2 of the command center. And then there's floor 1, which is above it. And then floor 3, which is below it. So it's a 3-story command center. And that's where they would have launched the nuclear weapons. That's where they would have had their sleeping quarters and their kitchen and all of this. And a fellow in Arkansas decided to convert it into an Airbnb. It's a luxury Airbnb. It's not cheap. I did it. It's a business expense, so it's a write-off. It's not cheap. And when I signed up to do it, I was like, I'm not sleeping in that thing. The idea of sleeping underground, that far underground behind 6,000 pound blast doors was not my idea of a fun time. However, the temperatures in Arkansas in January were in the teens, and I was freezing my butt off in the camper, and I just desperately wanted to be warm. So me and the dogs, we slept in the silo. All right, next one. And that video isn't up yet. It's going to be a fun one that's coming. So thank you for subscribing. I would love to expand my activity. Thus far, I don't have funding for this entire show, so I'm using my savings. So I'm a producer, yay. And I would love to maybe this turns into my next idea, if I got funding, would be to take my novel and create a screenplay out of it, rescind order, take that novel, create a screenplay, produce a low budget independent film, and to film myself making the film. So do a documentary of me on the journey to making this film. And that would be one idea. I'd love to go overseas and visit nuclear sites overseas, but that's a lot of money. So we'll see where that leads.
Wow. Thank you so much, Natasha. That's so amazing. And we learned a lot. It's so interesting. So now I would like to take a group photo. So if you are in the position to activate your video, I'm not going to force you to, but so I would like to take some photos. So please smile and wave if you can. Okay. Hello. Hi. Hi, cheese. Okay, we have these two screens. So I'm going to do one more. Hello. Okay, just in case one more. Hi. Hi, thank you. Great. Yeah, thank you so much again, Natasha, for sharing your so exciting adventure. And we are so looking forward to following what you are going to do the next. And please, everybody, please follow her on YouTube and subscribe to her channel. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, Fatima, for sharing your experience. And thank you, Dr. Porter, and everybody, and everybody for attending this event. Thank you so much.